Good afternoon. My name is Jane Michelle Clark, and on behalf of our company, Cloud Managed Networks, and our hosts, Ingram Micro and Cisco Canada, I'd like to thank you for joining us to talk about some of the challenges facing IT departments in schools and school boards today. I'd also like to introduce you to Sina Radfer, who is a security specialist at Cisco, specializing in the education space.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Sina. Together, we're going to be sharing some of the concerns expressed by people in your positions and providing some suggestions on how to combat these challenges. But first, a little about us. The founders of our company spent the early part of their careers gaining all kinds of expertise in the areas of network architecture and management, connectivity, security, and other essential areas of IT. Then, in 1998, they founded Cloud Managed Networks. In the earlier days, Cloud Managed was one of the very first companies to start working with Meraki, and indeed was the largest seller of Meraki products and services in Canada for many years to come. When Cisco acquired Meraki, Cloud Managed made the decision to sell only Cisco products and to sell all of them. And today, we are 100% Cisco plus managed services. One of our key areas of focus is education. As a result, we work with 17 school boards, a couple of private schools, and a corporate training company. And personally, I have over 25 years teaching experience at various levels and see pretty much every day the challenges associated with having tech in the classroom. And there are times, I'll tell you, when it's not easy. In terms of how we work, though, what I'd like to share with you is our approach. What Cloud Managed does is to go in and we meet with you first, and we get an understanding of what your needs really are. And in some cases, we'll actually do a full assessment of your network as a starting point. But regardless of where we start, it's always to assess the challenges you are facing and then provide you with options that will work within your budget. Of course, if you need something as simple as a quick quote on a piece of hardware, we're very happy to do that as well. As I said, working with people in education is something near and dear to our hearts, and we're always looking for ways to serve you better. To that end, we reached out to school boards throughout Ontario and other provinces months ago to learn what's keeping up at night. And here is what we heard. Over the past 3 years, schools have seen an increase of anywhere from 30 to 60% in terms of the number of faculty, student, and visitors bringing their own devices into the schools and then wanting to connect into the school's network. The expectation is that this demand is going to continue to rise over the coming years. Especially as changes to curriculum require that students engage with the material more and more online. And so although many schools have done an excellent job in terms of heat mapping and looking at what they think the density challenges will be, there are problems that are arising that's really hard to plan for all the times that things change within a school and that the activity levels will change. One school board was telling us that in one of their schools they did something as simple as bringing in a display of live animals to the head office. They started having everybody come down to the office, and of course everybody wanted to take pictures, post them, use Snapchat, and all of a sudden the system crashed. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen in any kind of a situation. The other thing that we learned is that right now, with provincial plans changing, and with Ontario's requirement for mandatory centrally delivered e-learning programs, teachers are telling us they fully expect to see more and more secondary school level learners at school during their spares, times when the network providers had not, the people that were doing the provisioning in terms of access points, were not thinking they would have learners in the schools. And the expectation is that students will be working on other courses in the halls and that the lunchroom is just about anywhere that they can congregate easily. They will be working in between classes and wanting to access the network. What was really interesting in all these discussions that not one teacher mentioned that the library would be a place that they would expect to see students studying. And indeed, when we spoke to students, we spoke with 100 students in various secondary schools across the province, they tell us the library is not a place they always want to look to connect when they're doing assignments. Anyway, either way, this will create additional density challenges. It's also highly likely that people are going to want to access this material from popular gathering places, public ones, where the security may not be as robust as it is in the school boards, which is going to make schools more vulnerable to security breaches, especially if staff and students are connecting from their favorite coffee shop. Universities and colleges, of course, have been dealing with this for years, but what they're finding is that students are seeking to stream more and more outside content while they're on campus than was the case 2 years ago, all of which puts a strain on the network, of course. For K-12 schools and school boards, one of the concerns is keeping both the network and the students safe as they use the iPads and Chromebooks that are provided by the schools to access the websites, especially since they don't have any kind of user authentication on these machines. As you'll hear from Sina in a few minutes, Cisco has a product that can actually help with this and then identify if a student has gone to a site that's potentially malicious for a variety of reasons, is to figure out which student went there. Increasingly, we're also seeing that schools are using apps to help with scheduling, to get parental signatures on permission forms and other documents, to use the app to collect funds online from parents ahead of time for trips, pizza lunches, and more. One IT specialist told us that every single month he gets new requests for new apps that should be adopted. They're coming from teachers, even from parent-teacher council meetings, and many of them provide excellent services. So the challenge now becomes how to identify the best apps and then how to integrate them into the system, and then what processes and policies need to be put in place to ensure robustness of the network as well as security of the platform overall. It's also prompting cloud-related discussions with the benefits of private versus public versus hybrid being debated. And this is one area in which Cloud Managed Networks, our company, has a lot of experience and is very happy to provide guidance. All right, so no matter what industry you're in or what kind of school or school board you represent, one of the biggest challenges today is security. Today, more so than ever before. Not only are organizations being required to ensure that data, and school boards are being tasked with ensuring that student data is safeguarded, people are looking at the potential for fines that are possible under PIPEDA, and the requirement to disclose is a big concern if there are errors of any kind. So we're looking at it in terms of the survey that was conducted fairly recently to say, are we ready? Do we have the tools that we need? Because today we're looking at making sure that not only are the networks protected from intrusion that can make data public, but can shut down connectivity either temporarily or for longer periods that can start to impact the network as well. As you're going to see in a few minutes, Sina will be talking about some of the products and services that we have that can absolutely help in this area. We've also got products that he will talk about that ensure that you can back up the data that you have, and in the event that there has been some kind of a breach, you'll be very easily able to restore the system afterwards. The product I'm talking about is Veeam, and Sina will talk about that in a few minutes. But in addition to the new wave security that's being required by the province, we've got people being increasingly concerned with other devices. So that refrigerator that has just been ordered for the school's kitchen, guess what? A lot of times it's going to be Bluetooth enabled. It will be trying to connect with networks. And what we're seeing today is that IoT is one of the biggest areas in which unseemingly protected connections become vulnerable to hackers. So we're seeing that's one of the big areas in which people are now getting onto your network. The other concern has to do with the fact that teachers' contracts are coming up for renewal very shortly in Ontario, and if discussions in August stall for any reasons and teachers start working to rule, or worse, we have a walkout on our hands early in the new year, the chance of students wanting to retaliate in some way increases quite dramatically, and mischief can come from anywhere. So we want to make sure that schools and the networks that they ride on are able to be well protected in the event of any kind of challenges that are made that we're not expecting. The biggest concern, however, is one that's not necessarily related to IT per se. Experts such as yourselves know what needs to be done. The problem is that you don't have enough funds to move forward in many instances. In particular, operating budgets are being scrutinized more closely than ever, and in some cases, in some provinces, quite a number of cases, funds have been reduced or frozen. In some instances where capital expenditure spending is a little bit less constrained and operating expenditures, however, are very, very stretched, it's possible for us to be able to help in other ways. As an example, if you were to purchase a piece of equipment and we combine that with some licenses, we might be able to go through Cisco financing to help you pay for that over a period of time and have the whole thing come out of capital expenditure budgets. We're seeing that happen with some public sector firms, and it might be something that the school boards could take a look at as well. At a time when you were being asked to do more and more with less and less, it's no wonder that I heard from one school board says, I sometimes feel like I'm on overload. And judging from some of the other conversations, I sense that that is a feeling that everybody is experiencing. So to quickly recap, schools and school boards have told us that their biggest challenges are the density problems being created by students moving around the schools in ways that had not been anticipated when the original heat mapping was done, and by more and more students, teachers, and visitors bringing devices into the school and wanting to connect, sometimes more people wanting to connect than had been planned for at once. There's also a concern about where students are going when they're using iPads and Chromebooks that are provided by the schools because no user authentication is required. Adding to that, the province's plans for having mandatory centrally delivered online programs means that students will be connecting and engaging with content from more and more places that do not have the security firewalls set up as robustly as may be happening at the school. So you're starting to look at it and say, where can people be getting onto our system, which is why there's that third wave of security requirements out on the horizon that we need to address. And as we said before, it's unfortunate because at a time when you are being asked to do more in the area of network robustness and security protection, you're finding that your operating expenditures are being hamstrung. But luckily, we've got a little bit of room left in our CapEx budgets, and so we've got some options for looking at that. As I said a second ago, it's no wonder everybody in this space is feeling not only overwhelmed, but overworked. And in terms of that overworked, cloud-managed networks is happy to play a role there to be able to help, to be able to augment your teams if you want so that you can focus on the day-to-day running of your networks, but I'll speak to that a little bit more at the end of this presentation. In the interim, I'd like to now hand it over to Sina Radford from Cisco Systems.
As Jane Michelle mentioned, I'm the security specialist to cover Central Region for Cisco. And that's everything, right? That covers, firewalls. We're looking at CloudSec products, endpoint protection. So we see a lot of things. And in Central Territory, as you can imagine, a lot of my clients are probably very much like you in the sense that you wear multiple hats. In the school board, you're the person that deals with the Wi-Fi being down. You're also in charge of making sure the passwords for the administrators are updated if they forget it. You're in charge of making sure the equipment in all the meeting rooms are working fine and then all the classrooms are working fine. And in addition to that, now you're in charge of making sure the school is protected and there's no malware and there's no bullying happening amongst children. So, lots of different hats, and it's hard to stay on top of security when there's, lots happening on the other side of things. So, Jane Michelle touched on these, but the biggest things I hear, whether it's, through a mid-sized organization or with the school, it's the same things. We don't have enough budget. We lack visibility. We have all these different tools and things we put into place for security, but we lack visibility. We don't know what we don't know. And at the end of the day, we have no real idea if we are protected against the next big breach coming down the line. So there's a lot of zeros on the screen right now, $6 trillion. That is what we're projected to be losing in the world of, through the world of hackers by 2021. As it stands right now, that number is just over $3 trillion. So that's how much the bad guys are getting from us. And really what we're spending all of these different defenses with all these different organizations and consultants, we're not even spending half of that to try to prevent these attacks. And you got to remember, this isn't, the old school, email attack from the Nigerian prince asking you for money or, somebody hacking a website and putting their name up on the site and saying, haha, I hacked this site and showing it to their friends. This is a full-time job now. People are spending 8-10 hours a day sending out ransomware emails, customizing them so that your employees will actually go out of their way, clickbait basically, and actually click on them, trying to find vulnerabilities in your network, trying to buy your passwords off the dark web. And a lot of those are older passwords are readily available, and a lot of people are, creatures of habit and stay with those old passwords plus or minus a character or two. So there's a lot of effort by the bad guys, being put by the bad guys to come into your network and actually, take you down from within. And there's a lot less money and resources put towards the other side of things. So the average cost of a breach in Canada specifically is around $243 per person per breach. So, when you start looking at some of these numbers, you can see how quickly it can start to add up. So I'm going to walk through some examples here. The first one you'll see here is Markham High School. So these are examples of recent breaches. You can Google this and find other examples yourself as well. There's literally dozens of cases that come up on a regular basis. But in this case, in 2018, the administrator was unaware of the breach. The hacker in this case accessed just some unsecure files that had everyone's passwords. The damage wasn't massive. It was all internal. They posted, personal information about these students on the internal Google Drive. And so the main two things coming out of this is, again, typical to what we hear, IT budget constraints, and the school was slow to react to be able to, stop this from happening as it was happening. Syracuse High School, a little bit worse. In this case, a couple of students just didn't feel like taking a test, so they took down the Wi-Fi network of the school. It took them a couple of weeks to get back up and running to where they need to. A lot of their administrative web-based tests were not able to be administered, and so there was a little bit of a delay and issues around grading at the end of the year as well. And again, IT budget constraints, slow to react. This is a more Canadian example. I know I've done this before. I usually there's a ton more U.S. examples to give, but I wanted to keep this very focused to Canada. But I'm sure everyone's heard of it by now, that the town of Wasaga Beach. They made a pretty crucial error in the sense that their backups were actually on the SQL server in their environment. So when this ransomware hit, it actually hit the backups as well. And that's something we always talk about. I know with Cloud Managed, specifically with Cisco as well, some of the things we always preach is, do you have a backup strategy? Have you tested your backup? Have you, tried to get backup up and running, when you're not in a time of crisis or incident, really being able to test that stuff. Another thing that you'd want to look into as well in these cases that'll come up in the next slide is cyber insurance. Have you looked at purchasing cyber insurance? Have you talked to your broker about that? Because that can make a huge difference in terms of the overall cost. You can see here they actually paid the ransom in this case just to save them the headache of trying to figure out how to get their backups. Some of them, the data that was partially back up and running again. But the overall cost of this breach was $250,000. This factors in employee salary that were paid when they weren't working. This factors in re-imaging all those computers that were down, the servers that were down, trying to get back to day one. So you can see here, even though the cost actually, to the ransomers were $35,000, this cost us a heck of a lot more. The town of Midland learned from that. In this case, the firewalls were not compromised, but the ransom still was able to make it into their system. What they did is they actually had cyber insurance. They looked at Waterloo or Wasaga, in this case, and saw that they didn't, and those were the consequences. So they went out and actually talked to the broker and made sure that they were covered. But again, critical systems were down for over a week. So you imagine what kind of effect that can have to your overall day-to-day operations. And then the last one, who do you call? Who do we call when these types of things happen? It's not like a traditional crime where you get to call police and they'll come and save you. In this case, Riverside Fire and Police Services, did not pay the ransom, which is actually what we recommend in terms of our incident response teams. A lot of times what happens is if you do pay the ransom, they'll come back after you again because they know now you're a target. And 50% of the time, just like a real ransom, there's no real guarantee that they'll give you the files back, or they'll give you the ability to, decrypt everything that they encrypted. So in this case, 10 months of evidence was taken and couldn't be recovered, and people's court cases were actually acquitted. There was, real criminals that got to walk away scot-free because there just wasn't any evidence to convict them. I like these quotes. I just put a couple of these quotes up from CSIS in this case, and at the bottom from, the team. But the big thing for us is not everything is protected, right? So there's so many attacks. Can't get 100% of everything, and that's a huge, it's a fact. We can't build a Fort Knox. It's not possible. We don't have that kind of money. Nobody individually or no organization individually does. So we have to find ways to protect ourselves in a smarter fashion, in a way that gives us the visibility across all of those devices. We all know this. This is the world of today, right? You have schools, you have remote offices, you have multiple branches. You have BYOD devices. There's a lot of complexities that come in when you start using, hosted services or hosted or hybrid cloud services as well. And the more complexity we put into this environment, the more complicated our worlds get. And of course, I'm sure you've gotten a phone call from a few of these people as well. This is our cyber landscape. There are literally hundreds of different players that play in the cybersecurity space and offer different levels of protection, whether that's network, two-factor, IoT devices, web security. So there's a lot of people to talk to, and who is really the best one offering, tools that really help in this case. So when we've done our surveys and our cybersecurity surveys, actually every year that we've run it in the last 2 years, we see the same thing. The more complexity in your environment, the harder it is to, and that complexity in itself makes it hard for you to be able to stay on top of things, right? And 54% of legitimate alerts are just not looked at. You see, we're alerting everybody to death, and a lot of these, actual viruses that we need to be aware of are just going on undetected. The industry average still 100 days to detection. We had a client that got hit with the new version of Emotet. It took that particular malware less than 24 hours to affect something like 500 endpoints and 30 servers. 100 days to detection is just not enough in this case. So this is your world as well. So what we're trying to recommend here is the integrated approach, right? We're increasing the capabilities that we're offering while reducing the complexity that you're dealing with. So when you're looking at these mobile sites, your Chromebooks, iPads, and laptops that are in your network, your mobile users, your local schools, as well as the ministry that you have to connect to, with all of these different pieces, we're trying to offer an integrated security approach that gives you that capability that you're looking for. And Cisco really follows NIST principles, right? We kind of look at security as a two-factored approach. We're doing continuous threat detection on one side of things, making sure we have the right products and services and expertise in place to stop the threats from happening, but at the same time, continuously validating who you are. So when you look at internally at Cisco for our employees, it's actually kind of an annoyance. Every time we walk away from an application or every time we turn off O365, we have to actually validate that who we are. But that annoyance needs to be built in, because with that annoyance gives you that guarantee that, first of all, the devices that they're connecting to are up to date, and second of all, they are actually who they say they are, and they haven't just found somebody else's credentials and are logging into our network. So the integrated security approach is really simple. We have Cisco basically plays in all of these different areas. We definitely have products and services to help you with your network, with your endpoints, with your cloud, all of that. But really the backbone of these products, you look at some of these things like Duo for two-factor authentication, VPN to make sure we're doing the VPN tunnel and connecting to the main site, email security, so you're doing some of the scanning. But really what at our backbone is an organization called Talos. And Talos really is the world's largest group of non-governmental threat researchers. There's over 350 full-time employees. They're plugged into all of our products and services. And what that really means for you is a lot of intelligence at government level, CIA, FBI level intelligence. Even if you're looking at a 1 or 2 or 3 endpoint deployment, you're getting that same level of protection. And we're seeing a lot of data. These guys, look at 16 billion web requests a day. That's just below what Google sees, by the way. We have 4 global data centers continuously looking for the latest and greatest, monitoring for the best threats that are out there. And we're constantly giving you that data. That telemetry is sent back to all of our devices, all of our Cisco security products. So we call it the architecture advantage, right? And the big thing here is you see the threat, and it doesn't matter where it is. In this case, it'll go to our AMP and our Threat Grid cloud, and in real time, that will be quarantined, blocked, and that information will be sent to all of our other customers' security products. So brand new threat comes into the environment. No one's seen it before. Let's say it comes in through the endpoint, and it sits there for a week, and then it starts to act maliciously and try to breach its payload. AMP will quarantine that threat retrospectively, and in real time send that information over to all the firewalls, the endpoint products, the Meraki products around the world, and you'll get that same level of protection. Now this bug will not be able to enter your environment. So there's a lot of different tools and services that I kind of touched on there. Really what I want to focus the rest of the conversation on is on a few products. That's Cisco email security, Cisco's Umbrella, and CloudLock that are very specifically designed for educators and education kind of environments. So the first thing we'll talk about is email. It's still the #1 threat vector. 99% of most of the attacks that come in are still coming in via email. They're customized. They come into your environment. Someone clicks on them, download. The payload is downloaded, and ransomware is into your environment. I put up some examples. These are some of the ones that we've sent internally to spoof our people. We do, and you got to imagine at Cisco we do monthly security training, things like that. This particular one came from Brittany, and in this case, they were saying, you're out of compliance. It's end of quarter. You need to click here to make sure you write the test. That's actually very similar to what happens, within the organization. We get these types of emails from HR all the time, saying you have to take a course, you have to update. So we had about 15% of our workforce actually, click on this email and potentially bring ransomware into our environment. I love this one. This was the remote work policy email that came out that said we have revisions to our remote work policy. And who doesn't love that? Who doesn't want to be able to work from home somewhere? So, it kind of tugged at people's heartstrings, and we had about 20% of our employees actually click on this email. So it just goes to show you how easy it is to get in if you do enough research ahead of time to see what types of messagings can we get people to click on. So Cisco's email security product, formerly known as IronPort, really is that, solution, or the email gateway solution. We have obviously a physical version of it as well as a virtual version, which again is the most popular. And it will not only will it do the inbound and outbound, encryption of your messages to ensure that everything that's coming in and out is safe, we're actually scanning every part of that email separately. So we're looking at the body of it, the attachments, the web links, the sender. All of that detail is being monitored and scanned within Cisco email security, and that's how we ensure that you're protected. The next one I want to talk about is Cisco Umbrella. Maybe a lot of you would have known this as OpenDNS. It was a formal acquisition that we did a couple of years ago, and rebranded it to Cisco Umbrella. This is basically your first layer of protection. Cisco Umbrella is designed to give you DNS level protection in real time and can be installed on any sort of device, whether it's an iOS, whether it's an Android, MacBook, just standard Windows or mobile devices as well. And it's your peace of mind. Think of this as when you're off network, when you're not on firewall, you're very easily able to get this product up and running within your environment, and it's giving you that same level of protection as your firewall is when you're on network. And you can see here that it obviously protects student records, stops, that initial connection of being made, via web. So again, big benefit within the education space. It's simple to manage as well. I think all of the tools that I'm going to present today have very simple dashboards where you can log in and, enforce policies or look for threats. And keep in mind with Cisco, all of our CloudSec products now are connected with the product called Cisco Threat Response. So it becomes one dashboard and a single source of truth for you, where you can log into one place and plug in your email security, your DNS level protection, your endpoint, as well as some of the other functionality within the firewall, and actually do all of the work you need to within that one dashboard. And then this is, again, talking back to visibility, right? Where we're trying to eliminate all those gaps within visibility. And by implementing Umbrella, you really get a sense of what types of web traffic are coming in your network. You can start blocking specific sites like crypto mining, and you can get a good sense of your IoT devices as well. The last product I'll talk about here is Cisco CloudLock. And CloudLock really is, our window into file sharing applications and really workload and shadow IT. There's a few different areas that CloudLock looks at, and we're looking at making sure we're tracking bad behavior, aggressive behavior on online applications and email. We're looking at making sure sensitive information is not shared, credit card data, SIM data, people's personal records, any sort of health records, and all of these can be kind of accessed through the Cisco CloudLock platform. In this case, I'm looking at anomalous threats. You can see here there was 424 login attempts in a 7-day period. So you can see where account information has been compromised and on what platforms. We've highlighted Google in this case. Looking at Canadian social insurance numbers, so in this case, having data loss prevention, making sure that we're monitoring for, and the system will automatically track for a lot of these things. Things that look like birth dates, content that's shared that looks like grades, student grade info, SIN data, credit card information. As soon as that type of information is placed in a file sharing application like a Google Drive or a Microsoft Teams, it'll automatically get flagged to the administrator. And there's a few different ways we can set and automize these policies. The first one is to send an alert that says, hey, you're about to share sensitive information. Please review that data before you do. A lot of times that feature is turned on for internal to internal sharing just to make sure that you're giving the file a once more, as well as completely blocking that sharing from taking place by sending a notification saying you have been blocked, and at the same time sending the administrator a notification saying that this type of behavior was attempted. Some of the more interesting features within CloudLock are around tracking and monitoring student behavior and languages. And in this case, we're looking at extremely inappropriate language, so we can start setting up keywords to monitor for that. Really looking for bullies or bullying in this case, online bullying. In this case, tying back to the public health record data. So if you know that someone's parents, have full custody or split custody, and any of that information is shared, we can track that as well. Or if we see people discussing any of these types of conversations, we can actually, flag those. And then, really seeing the connected apps within your environment, which is a huge piece as well. We did this at a client site, and we found out that something like 30 employees had given Pokemon Go explicit permission to be able to access their Active Directory, but by using the work email address with that platform. So being able to see what kinds of additional applications are connected in your environment and starting to block some of those or limiting the use of those is a very big feature through the Shadow IT side of Cisco CloudLock, as well as actually Cisco Umbrella. Touching on a couple more of these things, self-harm is another one that comes up, so making sure we're setting up the right keywords to monitor for that. Obviously trying to flag that and get someone in front of that student to talk to them, or just understanding what kind of behaviors and conversations are taking place. And then the last one here I'll highlight is aggressive behavior. So, again, I apologize for some of the swear words on the slides, but these are real-life examples. And, you need to be real and look at ways people are talking, so that's how we've highlighted those. And, again, something like extremely inappropriate language. So we're just, the idea of using, Cloud Manage and Cisco is we're trying to change the equation here. We're trying to offer tools and products that speak to each other, that give you the visibility you're looking for. We're trying to give you solutions that are price effective so that you're able to implement them within your environment for reasonable cost. And, really take the speed at which you have, or the speed at which we want to implement and give you these, access to the security as quick as possible. And of course, Cloud Manage is very uniquely positioned in the marketplace to assist you with your needs. They are certified Cisco security reseller and partner, but they also, can assist you with your SD-Wan initiatives, anything around your access points, the security cameras, tons of insights within your network as well. So, work with your Cloud Manage account managers, and they'll be able to navigate the world with you, the world of Cisco with you, and really help you build out the right solution that makes sense. And I am going to pass it over to Jane Michelle here.
Thank you, Sina. The first place that we start, as we said earlier, is with an assessment. We take a look at your network, of course, but today we also assess risk. Risk can come in many forms, so we would like to start with penetration testing. We do the pen test, and what we will do is, if you decide to work with us long-term, any of the costs associated with that pen testing will be rolled into the purchase of the product or the license, so it's something that you will not have to pay for. When we come in, we take a look at what needs to be done, and we say, okay, where are you right now in terms of your overall system? What are the things that can be ignored today? What are the things that absolutely have to be put in place to protect you? And then if your budget's a little bit constrained, we're going to say to you, okay, here are the various elements that need to be looked at. Let's put a time frame in place for doing it, but give you an assessment of how much it's likely to cost your school board if, in fact, the threat materializes and you haven't been able to be fully protected. So what you end up with is a roadmap to moving forward that takes into account your budgets. And of course, as we look at it, our whole thought is how do we protect your school board and you in the process? So we know that teachers are looking to prepare students for the future and moving forward, but we want to help you be prepared too for whatever is going to be coming your way. And in terms of helping you be prepared for whatever is coming your way, we work very closely with your teams to be able to give you advice, to be able to support you in any way that's necessary, and that support is available to you 24/7 if needs be. We're not looking to take over what you're doing, but we do want to be able to be there as a resource, to be able to help guide you. And having had the experience that we have in the education space, we've seen a lot of things. And our approach is not to be able to just rip out what's already there. All of the solutions we have can be put on top of any networking that you already have in place. Any equipment that you're using right now, we will try to repurpose where we can so that we can respect your resources, as well as the goals that you have for the moving forward. And because we are part of a larger group, the TrustX group, it means that we have resources that we can bring in to help you whenever it's necessary. So if you have any questions related to the content of this webinar or any of the Cisco suite of products, please do feel free to reach out to us. Night or day, we'd be happy to hear from you. And on that note, on behalf of our company, Cloud Managed Networks, and our partners and hosts for today, Ingram Micro and Cisco Canada, I'd like to thank you very much for having spent time with us today, and we hope to hear from you soon.